guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, it's probably going to be a long one because I'm going to be talking about all the series that I either started, finished, continued, or DNF'd from 2023 to now in 2024. So it's basically an update on all the series that I'm in. So without further ado, let's just get into it. So I guess the first ones I want to talk about are all the series that I finished in 2023. First off being Once Upon a Broken Heart. Now I have that series somewhere up here. Well, I have a few of them. So I read Once Upon a Broken Heart towards the end of 2023 and I got hooked like halfway through that first book. And I ended up buying the next two books in the series like right away and read them like pretty much back to back as soon as I got them. And I gotta say, I really liked Once Upon a Broken Heart and the second book, A Curse for True Love. The second book, A Ballad of Never After, but unfortunately the last book in the series, A Curse for True Love, kind of dropped the ball for me. So this series would have been like one of my favorite YA fantasy romance series if it wasn't for the last book. Like, unfortunately, it just didn't do it. I felt like the first two books really developed the romance of the main characters. I really bought into that. And I really was enjoying seeing like the mystery of it. Like I didn't know what was going on, what happened in the past in the series. There's a big component of why I liked it was the mystery. But in the third book, when a lot of those mysteries were solved, it answered a lot of my questions. I was not satisfied with the answers. So unfortunately, that's why I didn't like it. The next series that I finished was the Mistborn Era 2 series. Now I actually finished the last book in Mistborn Era 2, which was The Lost Metal, in January. So that was a long time ago. That was over a year ago. But if I were to remember, I definitely don't like Mistborn Era 2 as much as I liked Era 1, unfortunately. I didn't find the characters as compelling as those in Era 1. I didn't love them as much, and I don't know, maybe that whole Western fantasy thing isn't really for me. Like, I enjoyed it enough, but it wasn't to the level that I usually expect to enjoy my Brandon Sanderson books. Although I did like The Lost Metal, but unfortunately I also felt like there are so many Cosmere references in The Lost Metal that just went right over my head. But I'm glad I did finish Era 2, and I'm glad that I get to move on to other series in the Cosmere universe. Another series that I finished in 2023 was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I have that somewhere here. So I finished this series last year. I absolutely loved A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and Good Girl Bad Blood. I love these two. The first book, I really enjoyed following our main character, and I love the simplistic mystery of it all. It's not like an Agatha Christie level mystery or a Sherlock Holmes level mystery. It was a mystery that I could follow. So I really enjoyed the first one of the, trying to solve a murder, and then the second book was trying to solve a disappearance, and I enjoyed it just as much. I felt like it continued on with a lot of the things I enjoyed about the first one, but kind of mixing it up by making it a missing persons rather than a murder. Unfortunately, just like with Once Upon a Broken Heart, the third book, As Good as Dead, completely dropped the ball for me. I feel like As Good as Dead was probably like one of my top 3 most hated books of last year. I enjoyed the beginning, but there's a certain point in the story where something happens, and I hated where the story went from there. I felt like things that happened after that were completely out of character. I stopped enjoying following our main character's point of view. I thought everything was just ridiculous. Like, everything that happened after this point was just completely unbelievable. And at that point, I was just trying to finish the book just so I could finish the series. So for Up to Be, read the first 2 and let's just pretend that the third book never happened. Although I also did read the little prequel novella, Killjoy, and I like this one. So the first and second books and the prequel, you should read. Just skip the third one. The next series that I finished in 2023 was Orange. Wow, why are we going through all the bad ones back to back? I have Orange right here. I'll just pick up the one that I actually read to finish the series. Now, this isn't even really, I don't know, it's hard to say. I feel like this book was not necessary, basically. I felt like the first 2 collections were enough. And then, yeah, the future one was kind of cute, was kind of sweet. This one was completely not necessary. I also hated how they handled the main character's depression and suicidal thoughts. I hated how they handled this whole thing. I felt like the first few books really handled the topic well, and this one just kind of spits in its face. I can't really say why without spoiling, but I think that there's a lot of dangerous advice or tips, not really tips, but the way characters handled things in this book is just a very dangerous way to handle these kinds of situations. So I'm gonna have to say skip this one. This, I think, was my least favorite book of last year. Like, I absolutely hated it, but I really love the Orange series though, so read the first 3. Okay, the next series that I finished in 2023 was It Ends of Us. Now, I don't know if you can really call this a series when it's only 2 books, but I did read both of these last year, the beginning of last year. I really enjoyed It Ends of Us. I know a lot of people, this book is pretty controversial because it's marketed as a romance, but for me, I did not see this as a romance. I actually went into this book knowing that this is a DV book. Like, this is not a romance book. This focuses on how a relationship can turn horrible, can turn toxic, can turn unhealthy, and really shows the nitty-gritty aspects of it. So I went in with that mindset, and I think that's why I was not completely disturbed by this book, because I knew what I was getting into. So looking at the book from that point of view, I really enjoyed it. I liked the message. As I went through the book, I had a better understanding of what DV survivors go through and how these relationships end up the way they do, and how there's a lot of things. If you want to understand domestic violence relationships, I think this book is definitely a good one to get into. Although, just, you know, be aware of trigger warnings. If this is a triggering subject for you, or anything involving this topic is triggering to you, just do your research. And then I read It Starts With Us not too long after. This book is definitely more of a romance. Although there are still parts of this book that, of course, remain unresolved. So those aspects still pop up in this one. But I definitely thought it was a bit sweeter. If you really enjoyed the romance in this, then I think you'll enjoy this one a lot more. I think this book is a lot more of what people were expecting from this duology. Now, the next series that I finished in 2023 was Truly Devious. Now, technically, Truly Devious has 3 main books. No, 3 main books, and then there's kind of like 2 spin-off books that aren't really like, they follow the same characters in the 4th and the 5th book. But the first 3 are more like contained within themselves. They follow the same storyline, and then the 4th and the 5th are spin-offs following the same characters. Now, I loved the first 3 books. I loved the 4th book. Unfortunately, the 5th book didn't do it as much for me. I really liked the premise for the book. I was very excited to see these characters go to a whole new setting, and I really liked the whole dual timeline thing of trying to solve the mystery in the present day and then also flashing back to what actually happened in the past. So I really enjoy that trope about this series, but I felt like the mystery wasn't as satisfying in this one. And I also really did not like how the personal lives and the romance in this book kind of took over a lot of the storyline. I felt like it wasn't necessary. I feel like people reading these books really enjoy the mystery part of the story, not so much the romance, and this book leaned way too heavily into the romance between the main character and her love interest. So unfortunately, I'm still glad I read it. I think I gave it like 3 stars, but not a great ending as well. The next series that I finished, well, it's not really a series, it's also a duology, was The Kind Worth Killing. I don't have them physically, but I really enjoyed A Kind Worth Killing. I thought that first book was so chock full of twists. Like, I did not see any of those coming. I loved following the main female character in The Kind Worth Killing. I found her to be a very interesting character, like a character trope that I really enjoy. Unfortunately, for the second book, it followed some different characters that I didn't like following as much, and the twists weren't as, I don't know, they weren't as cohesive for me. I guess it didn't make as much sense, or I was just kind of like shaking my head like, what's going on here? So I guess the first book is definitely way better than the second book for me. I think I'm just going to stick to the first book for recommending and just pretend the second book didn't happen. The next series that I was actually a reread. I reread the Hunger Games trilogy. I reread that series because I was really feeling for a reread. I guess I actually even read the third book. Lots of times when I reread the Hunger Games, I only read the first two because I don't like the third one. But I think in this reread, I actually read it all the way through just to see if my opinion would change. I definitely didn't hate it as much as the first couple times that I read it. And I definitely enjoy getting back into this world. I actually did that in preparation for the 4th prequel book coming out, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Fortunately, I did not enjoy that book at all. I didn't like following President Snow. I did not like seeing what Panem looked like back in the day. I did not care about what was going on. The characters felt kind of like hollow shells. They didn't feel like real people to me. So maybe that's a big part of why I didn't enjoy it as much. And because of that, I didn't even watch the movie. Another series, and the last one that I finished last year, was the Court of Thorns and Roses series. So I think I read the first 4 books, the first 3 books, and then the novella in 2022. And then last year, I finally gave in and read A Court of Silver Flames. Now I heard, man, this book was so hyped in my mind because so many people who have talked about it said they loved this book. They loved following Nesta. They really enjoyed the romance and the smut and the character development in it. Unfortunately for me, I hated Nesta in the original trilogy, and I was hoping that reading her book would make me like her character more, or at least empathize with her, but I really didn't. I did not care about her. I didn't like her attitude. I just don't like her personality and her type of person at all. So that's probably why I didn't enjoy this book at all. But thankfully, the series is done and I don't have to read a book about her ever again. So those are all the books that I finished in 2023. Now, I think I want to talk about the DNFs next. So all the book series that I DNF last year. Probably gonna go through this a lot faster. First of all is the Cruel Prince series. I wanted to give it a shot because I've heard so many great things. I read the first book, The Cruel Prince, and I didn't like it. That's basically all I have to say. Maybe I just don't like the enemies to lovers trope, and I felt like this was an extreme case of enemies to lovers. I have no idea how this author is gonna make these 2 characters fall in love, and if they did, I just wouldn't believe it. So I was like, no, this trope isn't for me. Decided to DNF it. Also, The Blade itself. So I started the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. I listened to it on audio because for me, this book felt pretty dense. A lot of people talk about how the character development in it is so great. And if you can focus more on the characters rather than the plot, you'll really enjoy the series. Unfortunately, I think for me, plot is very important for me to enjoy the series. I can't just be reading a character study. It won't work for me unless I feel like they're real people who are very compelling, and these characters just didn't pull me in. So I finished the book, but I don't think I'll be continuing on with the series, unfortunately, because I was really hoping that I would like it. The next series that I'll be DNFing is Fireborn. What is the actual name of the series? I forgot what it's actually called, but it's Fireborn by Rosario Munda. I was really hoping to enjoy this book, as I do with every single series that I start. I thought it would be something I would enjoy because of the whole dragons in a dragon rider academy school thing. I thought I typically usually enjoy books about dragon riding. For me, I think there was too much romance in this fantasy romance. I typically tend to I guess with really interesting storylines, I really like to focus more on the plot and the world building and the fantasy parts. But because this was such an interesting world and it focused too heavily on the romance, it just put a bad taste in my mouth. Like every time we'd start talking about the romance aspect between the characters, I just roll my eyes and be like, come on guys, we have more important things to be talking about. We have more important things going on. Why are we so hung up on each other? Like I didn't get it. I hated it. So that's the reason why I decided not to continue with the series. Honestly, if you like the romance in Fireborn, you might as well just read Fourth Wing. I felt like Fourth Wing, at least you know what you're getting into with Fourth Wing. You expect it to be more romance. With Fireborn, I was just disappointed with the balance. The next series that I'll not be continuing on with is the Inheritance games. Again, I read the first book and did not enjoy it. I was really looking forward to the mystery and the, what do you call it, the big mansion where you're trying to solve puzzles and find clues. I was so excited to get into that, but I found it really disappointing. Like, there wasn't enough interesting mystery points. So I think I was kind of hoping for a 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle type of balance. But the Inheritance Games, again, was way too much romance in this mystery romance. I really hate that. Those are the kinds of books I don't like, when I'm not reading it for the romance and there's a very heavy focus on it. So again, that one didn't work for me. Another series I'll be DNFing is the Clockwork Angel series. I wanted to give Cassandra Clare another shot. I feel like I read The City of Bones a long time ago when I was like in middle school or something. But I've heard from so many people that the Infernal Devices trilogy is a lot better than the other two. So I was like, okay, I'll give the best series a shot. Try it again, see if I enjoy the world building and, you know, kind of getting into this world. It wasn't interesting enough for me. I thought it was a bit boring, and the love triangle was not enjoyable for me. I didn't find myself rooting for either of the two couples. So I don't think it's gonna be for me. It's probably gonna be a waste of time if I were to continue on with the series. Another series that I won't be continuing on with is Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I thought this is a very beautifully written story. I love the Chinese, or I don't even know if it's Chinese, the Asian influence in this fantasy series. It was described very beautifully. And the romance was sweet and all that, but it just wasn't interesting enough to continue reading for me. It wasn't enough to keep me interested. Another series I'll be DNFing is the Ice Planet Barbarian series. I really liked the first book. I thought it was gonna be a whole lot of schmuck and a whole lot of nonsense, and I was just gonna read it for laughs. But I really liked that first book. I like the main characters in it. But then I realized that every single book following the first one is gonna focus on a different couple, and unfortunately I hated the second couple. So I'm just not gonna continue on with the rest of the series. I think I'll just take a win and just enjoy the first book and leave it at that. Also read the first book in the Selection series. This was recommended to me by a friend, and I think they really enjoyed it when they're in high school. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. I like The Bachelorette, the TV show. I've watched like a couple seasons of that. So I was going into this expecting that, but I felt like this book took itself way too seriously. I kind of forgot how YA romances were written back in the day. It feels very dated to me. I feel like there was like a lot of like sexism in this book, and I did not like the love interest, and I felt like the main character didn't have enough respect for herself. So no, it was not it. The next book or series that I will not be continuing, oh, I just mentioned it earlier, Fourth Wing. So I read Fourth Wing. I heard that it's a great book to read if you're a fan of Sarah J Maas, and I like two of Sarah J Maas's series. So I was like, okay, I'll try it. I'll go into it with those kinds of expectations. And unfortunately, I don't know. I mean, even going into it expecting what I was expecting and trying to read it for that, it wasn't interesting enough for me. I also really didn't like the main character. I think that also that's a big factor in me enjoying romances, is I have to like the main character. If I don't like the main character and I'm not rooting for her to find her true love, a romance isn't gonna work for me. And unfortunately, I did not like this main character. I also started reading Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I finished that book. And I know the other two books in the series focus on her two sisters. Unfortunately, I did not care about Chloe. I don't even remember her sisters' names from this book. I felt like it was very insta-lovey, and I feel like I get that a lot with contemporary romances. Whenever I give contemporary romance a shot, I always feel like it's so short that it feels like every single book feels like insta-love. And I guess that's probably why I enjoy fantasy romance more, because usually it's a bit more of a slow burn because we have multiple books for these characters to kind of fall in love, so it doesn't feel as quick. But with contemporary romances, they're usually only one book, and they have to fall in love, fall deeply in love, have sex, do all the things that a romance needs to do in one book, and I guess they're usually typically too short for me. So we'll not be continuing on of that series. And then lastly is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I was really hoping to enjoy this book. I've heard a lot of great things from different people. I don't know, it didn't impact me as much as I thought it would. I thought I would feel more for these characters. I thought that the whole trope was interesting enough, but I just didn't feel for the characters, and that's pretty much it. I wanted to have the feels, but I didn't get them, so I will not be continuing on with that series as well. So next thing I want to get into are all the series that I'm going to be continuing on in 2024. These ones are the ones I'm really excited about because a lot of them have either new books that just came out or new books that are coming out this year. So first and foremost, Skyward. So I have Defiant somewhere over there on my TBR shelf. So Skyward is the young adult sci-fi series from Brandon Sanderson. I read the first 3 books. I loved the first one, didn't like the second one, really enjoyed the third one, and then now the last book just came out last year. I still have not read it, surprisingly, but I plan to read it soon, probably in the first half of this year, finish this series. And I've heard a lot of great things, so I'm really excited to finish. I'm really excited to get into this book and finish the series. Surprisingly, I also will be continuing on with the Twilight series. Many of you may be wondering, like, what do you mean that series is finished? No, actually, I got Midnight Sun 2 years ago, just because of the completionist in me that wants my series to be finished here. So I got Midnight Sun. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it. I mean, I think I have to be in the right mood, you know, that mood to actually get back into this story. So hopefully I can actually read that book this year and have that series be done and add it to my shelf and be done with it. Another series that I'm so excited to continue with this year is the Stormlight Archive series by Brandon Sanderson. Now I'm currently doing a reread of the first 3 books in this behemoth of an adult epic fantasy series. I'm currently on the 2nd book right now, and the 5th book will be coming out in December of this year. So I do have a lot of time to slowly make my way through these books. I probably will even have time to read the novellas in between and kind of really prepare myself for that 5th book to come out. I'm so excited. I love reading series like this where I'm very much into it. I do a reread, and then I can, right when the newest book comes out, I can get into it and not have to like try and remember everything that's going on. So really excited for that. We'll probably be making some videos regarding this reread and reading that last book. So excited. The next series I'll be continuing on with is Heartstopper. So volume 5 came out, I think, in December of last year, and I actually already have it on my TBR shelf. I'm just waiting to be in the mood to read a graphic novel and to read a romance. I'm currently still like in this fantasy kick, so when I'm in the right mood, I plan to read volume 5. I actually also haven't watched the series, so I'm planning to like read volume 5 and then get into the series. So really excited for that. I've really been enjoying Heartstopper. It's one of those cute little YA graphic novel romances. I'll get to it when I'm in the mood. This one is one that I'm not too sure if I'm going to continue on with, but I added it to this list because there is a chance. It's Peter and the Starcatchers. Now this is a middle grade series that's a retelling of Peter Pan. And I've read the first 2 books. I think I read it back in 2021 or something like that. And I've had the 4th book on my shelf for a long time. I actually read this series, I think, either when I was in elementary school or in middle school. And I've had the 4th book for so long, ever since then. So I decided to pick up the first 3 books again, try and reread the series, continue it on, try and finish it. I have the 3rd and 4th book on my shelf right now. If I ever get in the mood to read some middle grade, then I'll pick them up, but might not be this year, might not. I haven't completely decided to DNF it, so it's just gonna stay on this list. Actually this isn't really middle grade. I feel like this is more young adult. The Wayward Children series by Shauna McGuire. So I fell into a rabbit hole last year reading these books. I think I have them right here. So I didn't own any of these books last year. I listened to them on audio and decided to buy all of them. So now I have like 8 books in this series on my shelves, and the 9th book should be coming out. If it didn't already come out, I think it came out in January. I do plan to read that one. I still need to order it, but once I do plan on reading it this year. I really enjoy this series. Even though it doesn't follow all of the same characters, it kind of jumps around to all these different worlds, from the real world to these portal worlds, and I really enjoy that aspect of going back and forth and learning about all these different kids and their adventures. love that. Another series I plan to continue is the Sega series. What is this? A compilation of graphic novels. This series is very different from the other series that I typically read. It's very graphic, very vulgar, has a lot of violence, has a lot of sexual content, but I do find the story compelling. I do like the main characters in this series. I've only read the first two, first two books. I'll just call them books. I do plan to continue on with the series, but these are pretty expensive, so I've been kind of getting them slowly and reading it slowly. So I do plan on continuing on with this series. And then lastly, the last series that I plan to continue on with this year is the Crescent City series by Sarah J Maas. I actually have already ordered the third book, House of Flame and Shadow. It should be in the mail on its way here. And once that book gets here, I'm opening that box and I'm starting that book. Like, that's how excited I am to continue on with this series. And I just wish shipping did not take so long from the continental US to where I live. But yeah, so those are all the series that I'll be continuing on with this year. And then lastly, the last few series I want to talk about are all the series that I want to start in 2024. So I finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I finished 9 series in 2023. I have DNF'd 1, 2, 3, 13 series, and I'm only continuing on with 9 series for 2024. So I feel like I could probably start a few series this year and just continue on with it. Some of these books I actually a lot of them I already own most of the first books in these series. So I'm the type of reader where if I start a series and I enjoy it, I usually like to read those books as fast as possible. So I'm not too concerned with starting too many series and not finishing them. I'll usually either DNF it or I'll read it all the way through until I'm up to date. So some of those series, I'm just gonna go through them really quick because I don't have any thoughts on them yet, since obviously I haven't read it. The Bloodline series, The Lord of the Rings, Song of Ice and Fire, Wheel of Time, Children of Time, The Witcher. So those are a lot of like adult books, or well, a couple of them are young adult, that I have already on my shelves. A bit intimidating to read, but hopefully I'll get to them. And then some other YA books that I have the first books of that I may read this year or start is Ninth House, Six Crimson Cranes, Nevernight, Daughter of Smoke and Bone, Emily Wilde, A Deadly Education, A Curse So Dark and Lonely, Empire of the Vampire, and A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So wait, I actually own the first book in all of these series, but I haven't started any of them. So we'll see. I mean, by this time next year when I do this video again, some of those books on this list might either be in the continue pile or the DNF pile, depending. We'll see how it goes. And that's it, guys. This video has taken so long to film, but I like having these so I can kind of see where I am in the beginning of the year. It feels very refreshing to kind of see what I've accomplished last year, what series I've read, what series I have decided not to continue on with, to have like a definitive list, and then get excited about all the series that I'll be continuing on with in the new year. I guess we'll see how this reading year goes. I hope it goes a lot better than last year. And with that said, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.